unlike most of the rookies, his locker was 2 lockers down from mine. So I had Jumbo Elliott to my left, and I had Brian Williams, the center from Minnesota, to my right. And on the other side of Jumbo was Mike Sherrard, and then it was LT. LT chewed tobacco, I chewed tobacco. And one morning he was walking by and he sees me putting a dip in. He's like, Rook, let me have a dip. And I'm like, no problem. I hand him the can and he just keeps walking. And I'm like, all right, I should have brought 2 cans in. So the next morning I bring 2 cans in. LT walks by and he's like, Rook, you got a dip? And I'm like, yep, there you go. And off he goes. But that was like my relationship with him for the most part. But in practice, being a rookie, you're on the scout team. He'd be out on the field with a $20,000 Rolex on. It was nuts. Like diamond encrusted Rolex. My wrists are all taped up. I got my gloves on. He's got maybe tape on one wrist and his watch on the other. And he'd be in a stand-up position. I'm the left guard. He'd be like, I'm going to fake outside and go inside. You're not going to even be able to put a hand on me. And I'm thinking, yeah, whatever. I got you. And he'd fake to the outside, and I'm thinking he's going to go outside on me. So I probably overset because I listened to him, and the next thing you know, he's going inside, and I'm literally like pushing him on his outside arm as he's going by.
Welcome to the Gallery and Hurley Unfiltered podcast, Iowa Football Rewind.
Subscribe now on YouTube or your favorite podcast player to get a behind-the-scenes look that you won't find anywhere else.
This episode, we are excited to welcome Scott Davis, former offensive lineman for the Iowa Hawkeyes, 1988 to 1992.
My oldest uncle lives in Cumming, Iowa, just outside of Des Moines. He's a little older, so we haven't been back to Iowa other than I went back for my uncle's funeral. And I was lucky enough that my high school track coach, he bounces around in retirement, but they happen to be in Omaha where his kids live. So he was able to pick me up at the Omaha airport and we drove to Winterset. And then before I left, I was able to get together with some high school buddies in Omaha and get something to eat. And what shocked me was my family, my wife and 2 boys, if we go out to dinner anywhere in New Jersey, it's $150 whether we have any drinks or not. And when we went out to dinner after the visitation the first night, we went to a place in Winterset called, I want to say it was called Pizza Ranch. And it's got all you can eat pizza, salad bar, fried chicken, and the fixings with the fried chicken. And it's the first time ever my oldest uncle ever paid for anything. I'm like, Ron, I got it. He's like, no, let me get it. And there was, I think, 8 of us, and it was like $80. I can't
I was
believe
gonna say $10 a piece.
ice cream, soda, all you can eat pizza. And I'm like, $80. If we were in New Jersey, this would be a $300 bill at a minimum. Plus, we wouldn't even have access to a salad bar because they don't have salad bars out here. So the next night we had the funeral. Griff and I drove back to Council Bluffs, and a couple of my buddies from Glenwood High School, where I graduated, drove up to meet us in Council Bluffs. And Griff's like, oh, we're going to have a steak dinner tonight. I'm like, all right, I'll let you pick the place, either way, your way around the area. And he's like, we're going to Pizza King. And I'm like, I thought you said we were going to have a nice steak dinner tonight. And he's like, yeah, we are. And I'm like, the restaurant's called Pizza King? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, just trust me. So we get there. The name of the restaurant's Pizza King, but you walk in and it's like one of those old school steakhouses, pictures of cattle on the wall, blue ribbon cattle, beautiful dining room, oak. And as soon as the waitress came over to take our drink order, I'm like, listen, I'm not being obnoxious, but I'm like, can you explain to me why this place is called Pizza King? And she's like, oh, the original owners came here from Italy and they started a restaurant, a pizza restaurant, and they called it Pizza King. And when they decided to buy a steakhouse, they didn't want to lose their original customer base, so they wanted to keep the name the same. And I'm like, all right, that's a reasonable response. And even that dinner, there was 5 of us, and it wasn't more than half the guys got steak. I think I got walleye because if you tried to order walleye in New Jersey, they'd look at you like you had 3 heads. They don't even know what walleye is out here. I think I had the walleye fish dinner. It was maybe 40, $50 a guy. We had appetizers, drinks, excellent meal. That's one thing I miss about the Midwest is just food. and the cost of living. It's just, and when you walk into a Casey's to get a couple waters, the cashier actually wants to talk to you and find out where you're from and what you're doing. Definitely not like that out here in New Jersey. It was one of the things that was really difficult to get used to when I moved out here from Iowa was just how the people are. You just got to learn that they don't mean any disrespect or offense. They just don't have time for you. They have their own things going on. Completely different way of life for sure.
Definitely, yeah. When I lived in New York, I was like, why is everyone so angry at me all the time? And a couple of days they'd catch me in the wrong mood. I'm like, okay, I haven't fought since third grade, but let's do this. And they're like, I was like, you're screaming at me. You're sending me missed messages. I don't know what to do here.
But you hit the nail on the head, Nick. That's exactly how it is.
I actually thought you were an East Coast person, and then I forgot that you were born and raised in Iowa.
I probably am now because I've been out here. I'm 55. I think technically, well, no, I got another year to go, I think, before I've been in New Jersey longer than I have growing up in Iowa. But I was really lucky. I came out here for spring break with Ferroni and Michael Tetley, who was from Brooklyn. I came out with Ferroni one year on spring break just because I felt I've got a friend who lives basically in New York. Let me go out there and see it because I may never get back out here again. We came out for spring break, and his family they warm your heart. They make you feel like you're a part of the family. Michelle, his sister, they take you in like you're an adopted son. And we actually went into the city and we went into the area. Michael Titley took us into the area where like Mike Tyson trained, and his mom was like, make sure you put your wallets under the floor mats and carry your money in your front pocket. And she was so worried about our safety and somebody robbing us, but it was so not like that. But anyway, we really had a great time. And we went down to Atlantic City one night. And of course, there were at that time, they might have started with river boats in Iowa. They might have had a casino over on the water on the Mississippi. And they might have had one on the Missouri over where I grew up. But there weren't a lot of casinos. So to see Atlantic City, that was like a big deal. And of course, I'm sad to say I couldn't win any money. And we left there pretty much with lint in our pockets. But they also had a shore house. I moved out here from Iowa City pretty much right after we graduated. The three of us had a graduation party at the field house. And people know Mr. Woods from Ferroni's podcast with you guys. He was like our surrogate father away from home. Holidays, steak dinners out of the blue, whenever we wanted to go out, we'd actually kind of bodyguard for him after the games because he'd want to go out and have a few pops with us, and then we'd have to drive him home. Yeah, it was just great. All of our families were there. It was Mike Ferroni, Mike Devlin, and Marty Baldwin, the four of us, and kind of one last hurrah in Iowa City. And from there, Devlin and I, of course, gotten drafted, and we bought Ford Explorers from Mark Trumbull, who had a dealership down in Muscatine, I want to say. And we were tight with the Trumbulls as well. Great family.
Kriegers as well, right?
Oh, yeah, the Kriegers. Yeah, Kriegers owned the dealership. Trumbull worked at Hy-Vee. He was connected with Mr. Woods through Hy-Vee.
Oh, you're right. Yeah,
The Kriegers owned the car dealership. We got our Explorers from Mark. And set on my way on Route 80 out to New Jersey, Memorial Day week in 1993, to the Ferroni house where I arrived. And you're talking a day and age of no cell phones, no GPSs. And I just ran McNally maps trying to find your way. And I got to their house and it was Saturday. I unloaded all my stuff. They had like a mother-daughter split level ranch, and they said I could stay down below until training camp started, and that was going to be until roughly mid-July. So I unpacked my stuff, and there was a note on the table that said, come down to the shore. I'm like, what is Marie talking about? And she left me pretty specific instructions. Get on the parkway, travel south to exit 98, which is where I live now. Stay on Route 35 for about a half hour until you see a big blue water tower, and it'll say La Valette. Look to your left after 5 or 6 streets, and you'll see the street we live on. And I pull up, and it was like spring break. You have the bay on one side, the ocean on the other side. You got a road that runs south, a road that runs north. You got houses in between and houses on the bay side and ocean side. But between it all, it's only about 6 blocks total width on this island, so to say, where they had their shore house. And I went out with Mike and his buddies. Actually, I went out with his buddies because he was playing arena ball in Cleveland that summer. So he wasn't even there. But I'd gotten to know some of his buddies who'd come out to Iowa to see football games. And so they took me out. And I just remember going to the surf bar. And I'm from Iowa. I'm not used to going to clubs in New Jersey, New York, this and that. I had jeans, I think a t-shirt, cowboy boots on. We go into this club and they have shorts, nice collared shirts, walking up to a bar and there's literally police officers there with guns checking IDs and a line to get in. And that was like my first weekend in New Jersey. Going to the beach every day, seeing the ocean. I like to fish, saltwater and freshwater. It was just like, my God, this is like being on vacation every weekend. And that's what really kind of stuck in my mind, even when I was playing for the Giants and where Giant Stadium is and where I lived in Union with the Pharaohs is nothing like the shore. It's like two different worlds. Because if you've ever landed in Newark Airport, it's just all concrete. They've got container ships coming in, they've got oil rigs, and then the ride from Union to Giant Stadium is just all parkway. You're passing dumps, you're passing garbage and huge garbage incinerators. When you look over to your left, right before you get to the exit for Giant Stadium, there's this big mountain. And you start asking around, oh yeah, that's just a mountain of garbage. They just keep dumping garbage and putting dirt on top of it, and now it's a mountain. It's just, and the smell, oh my God, if it's low tide when you're driving up the turnpike to get to Giant Stadium, it was a lot to get used to. But luckily, I met people that were friends with the Ferroni family, and they took me in and showed me around and really helped a lot of good people. They surrounded me with and introduced me to a lot of good people. So it made the transition pretty easy.
Funny where the Meadowlands is, right? And then it was shared with the Jets. It's really a unique property out there.
Our training camp was at Fairleigh Dickinson University in Madison, New Jersey, so it's about an hour away from Giant Stadium, and it's south and it's west, and it's right before you start to get into the Pocono Mountains of Pennsylvania. It's hilly, there's trees, and we were staying at this college. The dormitories barely had any air conditioning. The beds were awful. We had to drive to the locker room to get dressed, and then we had to drive to the field for practice. And now these are in the days of two-a-days, and you could lose in a practice alone, you could lose 10 to 15 pounds of water weight. And this is in the time when you had to weigh in before practice, weigh in after practice, and you couldn't practice in the afternoon unless you were within 1 to 2 pounds of your morning practice weight. They wouldn't let you. You had to just basically sit there and drink Gatorade until you got your weight back up to that. But hot, humid, and it was just shocking to me. I'm like, these are professional conditions, because at Iowa, we had it pretty darn good. Our practice fields, our locker room, where everything was situated in terms of just walking to get to places. You get into your car soaking wet with sweat to drive back to the locker room to shower. Then from there, you had to drive back to your dorm rooms, and it was brutal. So my first 2 seasons with the Giants, we were at Fairleigh Dickinson, and that lasted about 5 weeks, 6 weeks. And then my next 2 years with the Giants, that would have been 95 and 96, we were all the way up in Albany at University of Albany. And that wasn't quite as bad, other than it was still a good 4-hour drive from where most of us lived. So it wasn't like on the weekends you could escape and get back to some normalcy. You were stuck there. If I remember right, that facility at least was a lot better in terms of you didn't have to get in your car. Once you're parked, you could walk to eat, you could walk to practice, you could get to where you needed to go just by walking. Nowadays, I think they just go once a day, and I believe at least probably what, 25 of the 32 teams all practice at their main facility and don't go anywhere.
Back when I was paying attention to it, there were still some teams that did that. Like my brother was with the Raiders. They were up in Napa.
Okay.
Like we went to the Chiefs were up in Wisconsin for a while when I was bouncing around. So yeah, I'm not sure what it's like these days.
I was with the Giants too.
Okay.
Yeah.
You were the first year under Fossil.
Yep. Both years he was there. And then I can't remember how long he stayed a little bit after that. But yeah, the 2000 team went to the Super Bowl. So they had a pretty good team a year after I left there. I remember the basketball court was the locker room. So they just converted the whole basketball gym to a locker room. You had to drive to your dorm to go stay, but at least you could walk to the locker room.
No, guys would be riding on their tailgates because they didn't want guys inside their vehicle.
If you got a cramp, you'd like slam on the gas.
Yeah, like, right.
It's dangerous, right?
And that's the only time in my life I've seen guys go into full body. Like I saw the only player I ever saw get heat stroke was Bob Cratch, and I'd never seen anything like it. It was my redshirt freshman year. I don't know if Ferroni talked about it, but they'd come back from Hawaii. Iowa opened the season at Hawaii. It was Bob's senior year, and we were practicing for, I forget who they were playing, but we were running sprints, and he kept going, and he wouldn't stop. And I remember Coach Ferentz and the strength coach at the time, Derv, I think, was still the strength coach. They brought in Ray Moran, I think, my second year at Iowa, and trying to get him to stop, and he just kept running. And the next thing we could tell, like, he wasn't right. And then, like, a couple of his teammates, the older lineman, grabbed him, and next thing you know, he's like fainting and he's losing all bodily function control. And they got him on a golf cart and they zipped him over to the hospital, which was great to have the hospital so close right there from the practice field. And yeah, he ended up missing that week, but he was like severely dehydrated. And if you think about a trip out to Hawaii and back, just the trip alone severely dehydrates you, the flying itself. Never mind playing in the game out there in the heat of Hawaii and coming back to Iowa City, where it's always hot and humid in August anyways. But then when I was with the Giants at Fairleigh Dickinson, Howard Cross, a tight end, I've never seen a guy just literally, he couldn't move off the ground. He was laying on the ground and you could tell his fingers were all curled up. His arms were stiff. It was almost like he was knocked out. He just kept saying, I can't move. I can't move. I'm cramped up. His legs. And they literally lifted him up under the training cart to get him off the field and just took him over to the sideline and hooked him up to an IV. And before you know it, he was uncramped and he was back out on the practice field. And you know, I think about stuff like that. And just compared to today, it's just, do they even sweat enough today to actually cramp? I don't know. The nutrition, the weight training, having two younger boys, and just seeing how things are for them. And it's just so much different than what it was when I was their age. It's just, even the NFL, I try to explain to people, my rookie year with the Giants, we had a $28 million salary cap. Phil Simms was making, I want to say, let's just say 4.5 million. I think LT was making 5. So let's just say you take 10 million off of that 28. Now you're down to 18 for 51 other guys on the roster to divvy up between themselves. And obviously your veterans are going to be making more money than your rookies. I want to say it was for almost like 30 million per year. And I'm thinking that was our entire salary cap, is now his just standalone salary is what our entire team, 53-man roster, had to play under. It's crazy. God bless the NFL. The benefits for retired players with each new bargaining agreement only better. As you guys probably know, like with the health spending account, that's been huge for my family. I think we'll see a day, maybe even with the next collective bargaining agreement, where maybe we'll get something with medical insurance, maybe not full coverage, but maybe something even a little more substantial than what they're doing now. But as you guys know, they cover your primary care stuff through Cigna as it is now. I just like to see the benefits grow as time goes on and they become more and more wealthy, so to say.
Going back to the training part of things, so you think back then it was probably too harmful, right? It was like, okay, if you're not drinking water and you're like I guess it's a mental test. I guess you've got to build that into the process somehow. But then now you think they've gone too far the other way? Or what are your thoughts on how that worked?
When we trained at Iowa, and it was very similar to the training they did with the Giants, it was all about heavy bench, heavy squat, heavy deadlift, heavy weights. And I don't know that anybody said anything to me about drinking water more than 3 times in the 5 years I was there. In terms of rehydration and in terms of nutrition, it was awesome having that training table every night. If I remember right, the food wasn't that great because I remember getting done at training table, going to study hall with Ferroni and Devlin, getting out of study hall at 9 o'clock and ordering buffalo wings pretty much every night from, I forget the name of the place, but we'd finish off our night with a tray of buffalo wings. Never had a case of water sitting in our room. I don't know what we drank, but I know it wasn't a lot of water. There's water bottles scattered everywhere in my house now. I go to Costco once a week and get 4 cases of water, and never mind buying my son the gallon waters to carry around with him at school. If I told you, when I was with the Giants on, it was a half practice day, then they bring in Cubby's barbecue, and it was catfish, mac and cheese, barbecue pork, ribs, maybe some mixed vegetables, cornbread, bread, and then our meals. Obviously, if we traveled, you were on your own to eat whatever you wanted the night before the game if it was a home game, or eat whatever they were serving in the hotel, which was pretty generic. Or if we were on a away game, it was eat wherever you and your teammates want to go eat somewhere. Nutrition definitely wasn't nearly as a factor as it is now. Now it's like everything is about nutrition. My 2 boys teach me about nutrition. Like I found the only way for me to lose weight was to fast. I would literally only eat between 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock at night and just drink water and my black iced coffee all day long. And it worked for me. I went from 90 to 265. And then my boys are like, no, you shouldn't be, you can't do that as a lifestyle. You might want to do that for a few weeks, but you can't keep doing it forever. And when I don't do it, I seem to put weight on. And I'm telling you, even now, I can have a cup of Cheerios and vanilla yogurt, the protein yogurt, and maybe a small sandwich for lunch or a bagel or something. And then I try to eat a normal meal, and here I am back up to 280 pounds. And I walk every day. I still try to work out every day when I have time. I don't know. But yeah, one of the reasons why I tore my pec and I've torn both pecs is just because our mindset when I was coming through, and even when I was with the Giants, is just heavy weights. We did very little in terms of core, very little in terms of flexibility, and it was just get big and strong and go have at it. Now, I just see the exercises a lot of the kids are doing, and even my son who's in high school has a trainer, and he'll come home and show me some of the exercises, and I'm like, man, that's awesome. Like, I wish I was doing that stuff when I was your age. For me, it was just all about how much can you bench, how much can you squat, how much can you deadlift, and you just keep repeating that. You probably remember back in the days when we had the Iowa bench press posters.
I was gonna say the
posters. Yeah. I was like, name was on that one. I think I've seen that many times.
And that's how you tear muscles. That's how you shorten your career. You want your muscles to be fluid, flexible, firing on all cylinders. And it's just not about how much weight you can push.
Yeah, they've at least started to think about more of the longevity piece of it. I think we talked to Pat Anger, and he hurt his ankle, and he's like, I'm going to come back in as fast as possible, and then got degenerated from there. I guess you're that age, you don't really think, okay, I need to really rest and let this heal and do this properly. Otherwise, long term, you're not going to be able to play for that long. I guess that's maybe part of the culture as well. That's an immediate thing with games each week.
Yeah, that's really what happened to me when I went to Atlanta. So when my contract was up with the Giants, Coach Reeves got let go. He was hired in Atlanta, and the Giants were bringing in Coach Fossil. I hadn't met him yet, but I was still working out at the facility. Coach Reeves called my agent and said, "Hey, I think Scott can start down here if he wants to come down here and play." And I went back and I'm like, I really don't want to move to Atlanta. If that's where my opportunity is going to be, I'll definitely go. And I was waiting on the Giants, and they were waiting to see what other free agents they were going to sign. And I'm like, listen, Coach Reeves wants me to come down there, thinks I can start. I'm down there. So I went to Atlanta, and the offensive line coach was Art Shell, the Hall of Fame offensive tackle from the Raiders. And he basically said to me, I'm not starting anybody that's under 300 pounds. And at the time, I was like, I was like 285, 290, because my weight limit with the Giants was 287, period. And you know how they fine you if you're overweight, $50, and then it doubles from week to week, a pound.
Yeah.
And now I got Coach Shell telling me he basically wants me to look like a wood tick, or I'm not going to have an opportunity to start. So I'm like, all right, I'll do whatever I got to do. And so I got up to 295. If I showed you pictures from Atlanta, my head's huge and just sodium biscuits and gravy bowl. What I would do is the biker shorts. I'd slide 2.5 pound plates up each one of my legs, and then I'd put the baggy practice shorts on over the top, and then I go weigh in, and I could always get to 301, or I'd be 300 pounds. And I literally did that. But in the last preseason game, I became the starter at right guard in the last preseason game against Jacksonville. They took the starters out at halftime. So there I am on the sideline. I'd taken my shoulder pads off, had the baseball cap on, really wasn't drinking a lot of water. Again, water wasn't like, oh, you got to drink the water. You got to drink electrolytes, water. On the sideline sweating in Jacksonville last preseason game, and literally 3 guards went down in a matter of 1 quarter. And Coach Schultz looking at me, Scott, you got to go in. We don't have anybody left. Shoulder pads on, helmet on. I go back in. And when you go in the fourth quarter of a preseason game, you've got guys, if they're playing in the fourth quarter, they're literally fighting for their life. They're fighting for their livelihood. They're going 100 miles an hour. These are the guys that are literally fighting for a roster spot. And I'm going in there after having basically stood on the sideline for a quarter and a half, chilling, not even thinking in game mode. And I'm going back in just so we can finish out the game. And meanwhile, we're calling plays. We're down like 4 points. And whoever our third or 14 quarterback was, he's trying to earn a spot. So we're dropping back into passes every play, and the defense is just teeing off. And I remember Randy Wynn, defensive tackle from Notre Dame, rookie, wanting to make a name for himself. He's going 100 miles an hour. And I'm battling him. And I feel on one play, I feel my pec, because I'd strained my pec when I was at Iowa, and I felt the same thing in the fourth quarter. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And so the game ends. I've got a strained pec. We opened up on the road the following week at Detroit, and I got a block. His son's in the league now. Big Samoan defensive tackle from Utah, Luther Ellis.
Okay. Yeah,
You
sure.
guys are younger, but it was
Yeah, I guess it was
Luther
the older.
Ellis.
Yeah, for sure.
And he was just a bull. He's driving me all over the field. And I'm pretty sure that same game, Mike Wells was on Detroit, and he's screaming meathead from the other side of the line. He was lined up on the other side. We used to call each other meathead, and you're a meathead, now you're a meathead. And anyways, he's literally like talking to me like that during the game. And I'm able to hold my own, but he basically just throws me all over the field like a rag doll pretty much the entire time. And then, so now we're back home for week 2 in our home opener against Carolina. I had to put a strap around my arm to prevent my arm from going back, is to prevent it from tearing because it was strained. And I remember going against Greg Cragen. He put like a rip move on second quarter and basically just ripped it, just tore my pec. It didn't matter that I had the strap around my arm, and put enough pressure on Chris Chandler that he threw an interception. So then I'm turning, I see the cornerback picks it off, and I'm running, and literally my arm's just dangling. I got one arm bumping and the other one's just dangling. And I got over to the sideline and took my shoulder pads off, explained to him, I'm like, I definitely tore it. I felt it tear. And literally by the end of the game, it was just blood. up and down my arm. And so in talking with their trainers, I just assumed I was going to have surgery and be put on IR. And they're like, no, we want you to rehab it and come back 4 to 6 weeks. You should be all right. It was never, I literally went from probably being able to bench press 400, 450 pounds to being unsure of doing 10 push-ups confidently, just being confident in that muscle itself. So from then on, I think we were 2 weeks from the end of the season. We were out playing Seattle. Morton Anderson, we were maxed out on our roster. Morton Anderson sprained his hamstring or tore his hamstring. We had to play the Chargers the next week. They had to sign somebody to replace Morton. So I ended up I was an extra lineman. I was like the 11th lineman at that time. And so I ended up being released there. And they're like, do you want to stay here with the team or do you want us to fly you home? And I'm like, I'm here, San Diego. I might as well stay. And I'd gotten to be pretty close with a lot of the linemen and Chris Chandler himself. And so after the game in Seattle, we flew right to La Jolla. We had our meetings on that Monday. We had Tuesday off. The guys knew I'd been released. And Chris Chandler's like, listen, I got a buddy that manages the whatever casino in Reno. How about we hop on? I'll get us a flight to Reno. It's only 20 minutes or 30 minutes. And we'll go party it up tonight. And I'm like, hey, I don't have to play by me. Let's do it. So literally, as the coaches are walking into the hotel after meetings, a group of 6 of us are walking out of the hotel with like an overnight bag. I had no idea where we were going, but they could see we had like bags in our hand. But anyway, he got us a flight from San Diego to Reno and we partied it up that night. Came back the next day. We were back in time for practice meetings and everything else. And hindsight's 2020. I had a great time with them that night, but then having to just go through your day by yourself because I couldn't do team activities. I was released. Just hanging out at the hotel. It was all right. I guess it was just some time to get my mind right and try to figure out what else I wanted to do. If I wanted to try to come back from it, have surgery. Wasn't sure what I was going to do, but I probably should have looked up Bax while I was out there, Rob Baxley. I wasn't in that frame of mind to see, oh, maybe Bax will come down and pick me up. And he's out in he's out in that San Diego, California area.
Tell us about LT.
Unlike most of the rookies, his locker was 2 lockers down from mine. So I had Jumbo Elliott to my left, and I had Brian Williams, the center from Minnesota, to my right. And on the other side of Jumbo was Mike Sherrard, and then it was LT. LT chewed tobacco, I chewed tobacco. And one morning he was walking by and he sees me putting a dip in. He's like, Rook, let me have a dip. And I'm like, no problem. I hand him the can. And he just keeps walking. I handed him the can and he just kept walking. And I'm like, all right. I should have brought 2 cans in. So the next morning I bring 2 cans in. And I'm sitting in my locker. I'm talking to Brian and Jumbo. And LT walks by and he's like, Rook, you got a dip? And I'm like, yep, there you go. And off he goes. But that was like my relationship with him for the most part. But in practice, being a rookie, you're on the scout team. So you have to run the other team's plays against your number 1 defense. And they'd be putting blitz packages together with him. And he'd be out on the field with a $20,000 Rolex on. It was nuts. Like diamond encrusted Rolex. My wrists are all taped up. I got my gloves on. He's got maybe tape on one wrist and his watch on the other. And he'd literally say to me, he'd be in a stand-up position. I'm the left guard. He'd be like, I'm going to fake outside and go inside. You're not going to even be able to put a hand on me. And I'm thinking, yeah, whatever. I got you. And he'd fake to the outside. And I'm thinking he's going to go outside on me. So I probably overset because I listened to him. And the next thing you know, he's going inside. And I'm literally like pushing him on his outside arm as he's going by. But yeah, that was his last season. And when I was, like I said, as soon as I graduated from Iowa, I came out to New Jersey because I wanted to train with the Giants prior to training camp. And so when I came out here, I started working out that first Monday after Memorial Day. And the first person I ran into was Bart Oates. And Bart's, oh, I'm glad you're here early, rookie. And I want you to come in and work out with me every morning at 6 o'clock. And I'm like, Bart, workouts don't start until 7. And he's like, yeah, but I start at 6 because I got to be to work by 7:30, 8 o'clock. And he was literally working on his law degree. I think he was going through an internship level. He was almost there, but he was working for a law firm. So I'd come in at 6. Bart and I would work out. And Bart's a Hall of Famer. He's multiple time Super Bowl champion. I thought it was great that I got to work out with him. And but literally, when we were done, we'd shower. He'd put on a suit, tie, and off to the corporate world he would go. That's how things were different in 1993. And for me, I'd shower up, drive back to Union, get some breakfast, take a nap, wake up, have lunch, and then there was a Jack LaLanne Fitness Center about 15 minutes from Ferroni's house that I would go to and work out in the afternoon because seeing what I was going to be having to block in terms of D lineman working out when I was at the stadium prior to training camp, I was just like, oh my God, like you had Eric Dorsey. I don't know if you remember him. He was a really big defensive lineman from Notre Dame. You had Eric Howard, I think was from Texas, the nose guard. The Giants, and surprising to me, Ferroni was always a big Giants fan. And when I'd watch a Giants fan or a game, I'd be like, those guys are huge. I was 6'3", 285 pounds. And these guys are all 6'5" and above and strong as hell. And I'm like, why did the Giants draft me? Like, I'm 6'3", 285 pounds. I thought for sure I was going to the Bears or maybe even the Packers. I'm not a 6'5", 300-pound guy like all these Giants players are. It really helped me to be out here working out when a lot of guys didn't. And basically, if you didn't work out in the off season with the team, you had to do the conditioning tests, and you wanted no part of those. And same at Iowa.
Yep.
You weren't there for 80 or 90% of the summer workouts. You had to do the conditioning test.
I think you still had to do it. Everyone had to pass.
Wait,
Did he tell you about his conditioning test? The one summer he didn't stay in Iowa City?
Trying to remember if he did.
Went home and he bounced at that Joey Surf Club that I told you was like my first experience at the Jersey Shore. So came back home, worked as a bouncer, said he was getting his workouts in. And this would have been going into our sophomore year, I believe. And you know how he had to, they were timed 180s, I want to say. It was down, back, down, and back was one. And you had to do 3 of them, and they had to average out under a certain time. And no, it was either our rookie year or the second year. But Mike Stoops was a grad assistant defensive guy, and he was so obnoxious to the offensive guys, like just beyond obnoxious. And it was hysterical how obnoxious he was. But he had the timer, and I'm running next to Beef, but I'm ahead of him. But I can hear Stoops, Beef, you got to pick it up, Beef, after the first one. And then after the second, he's like, Beef, you're not going to make it, Beef. He's like, you obviously didn't do any training this summer. It's not like you got a coach like, come on, pick it up, you'll make it. Just stride it out, deep breaths. Beef, you're not going to make it, Beef. Give it up now. You might as well stop now, Beef. You're not going to make it. And you had to, I think, if I'm not mistaken, if you didn't pass that conditioning test, you had to keep doing it until you did. Just no less. It was brutal. So you come in as a rookie, they time you as a 40, and you're all gung-ho, you want to have a great 40 time. If only you knew then, they use that 40 time, and then they make you do 10 with 10 seconds in between rest, and you got to come out to 90, maybe 85% of your best time as you ran as a rookie. That's the conditioning test Coach Reeves had. So you're literally doing 10 40s. You got to run them within 85%. They got to average out within 85% of your best time. Maybe you wouldn't have tried to run so hard when you were a rookie, when they're taking your height, weight, 40, broad jump, all that crap. As if it matters then. You're already beyond the measurables.
yeah.
That was Coach Reeves' 40 time. But I wasn't the biggest guy, the strongest guy. I was just always very fast. That was like one of my attributes. I had good feet. Like I said, my redshirt freshman year, because Jim Poynton got hurt in the preseason, and Mike Miller's back was flared up. I actually got an opportunity to start my redshirt freshman year at right guard. And funny story about that, we were playing Oregon at home, and I was also on the kickoff return team. And I was like in that second wave of guys run back, make sure the guy catches it, turn up field, and get a block. And again, I was 18 years old or 19 years old. You run that stuff in practice, and guys aren't going full speed. You let up, and as soon as you find your guy to block, everybody lets up. I don't know if I was just in that state of mind or what, thinking the Oregon guy's just going to slow up and let me block him. This linebacker from Oregon on their cover team came down, and I'm telling you, he didn't break stride and basically put his helmet right in my chest, underneath my freaking chin. And I just remember flailing backwards like this, and I'm literally flying backwards onto my rear end. So that was my first play as a college player. Second play, we're on offense, we have the ball. We just call it a zone lead for Nick Bell. I think his fullback was, I could see him. What's his name? Hawthorne was the right tackle, Big George. Bill Anderson was the center. And we've been talking about dummy calls all week. The Oregon's good at picking up calls, and we're going to have to make dummy calls at some point in the game. And Bill had a nose guard over him. I had a 3 technique, and George had a defensive end. And Bill, I think the nose guard might have cocked on Bill so that he was cocked on my side. And Bill says, Liz. And I'm like, Liz? I'm like, and I look at the George. I'm like, Liz, George, meaning I thought I was telling George to come down and block the 3, and I was going to double team with Bill on the nose guard. Well, unbeknownst to me, dummy call. He's making a dummy call in the first play of the game. And I blocked down on the nose guard. I forget the name of the defensive tackle for Oregon, but he ended up playing in the pros. He came through unblocked, hit. Nick Bell's out of the game with a concussion. That was my second play as a college football player. And I can tell you, Coach Ferentz tore into me after that first series, but they really didn't have any other options. It was either Scott gets better or we're going to continue to have a boggled down offense. But I just remember holding my own the rest of that game. And you learn a lot. It's like I've always told the boys. And my first start on Monday Night Football against Dallas, the pros, for whatever reason, first play, it's for me to pull and trap Leon Lett. And we worked on it all week. We worked on Leon coming inside, Leon going outside. And I'm so freaking nervous. It's Monday Night Football. And even back then, Monday Night Football was still a big deal. It was like the only game everybody got to see. We're at Dallas. And of course, they didn't tell me I was starting until literally we're going out on the field. I guess they didn't want me to be nervous beforehand, but I'm like, there's no way the guy in front of me, Lance Smith, there's no way he's going to be able to play. So anyways, first play, trap left. I open up, I turn. I think I see Leon going outside, and I go to get him. I trip. I pretty much fall down. Leon cuts behind me, hits Rodney Hampton in the backfield for like a 5-yard loss. And somehow my boys found that on YouTube. And so one day I've coached them both in football. I've coached them pretty hard, but they would send it to me, and then they put sound effects as I'm falling down on Monday Night Football, completely whiffing on my block.
You can put that clip in here if you want. And the 300-pound.
Yeah, you're going to make mistakes. It's how you overcome those mistakes and how you respond to those mistakes. That's what's obviously most important. And sometimes I think they look at me like, oh, I've never made any mistakes. No, I've made mistakes. In the game of football, made mistakes. I've made mistakes in the game of life too. But I'm like, you just got to overcome them. But back to LT. So then now every year we have a Giants alumni get together. And funny story, he remembers me and remembers taking my chew every day. I got to spend the one season with him. And that was actually my best season with the Giants in terms of how well we did. We beat Minnesota in the first round. We played an epic game against Dallas for the NFC East title at home. I think it went into overtime. Emmitt Smith was playing with a separated shoulder. They were able to beat us. Then we beat Minnesota at home, and we had to go play San Francisco at San Francisco. And that was like, I want to say Steve Walsh, They were a machine. San Francisco and Dallas were a machine in the NFC in the early 90s. And as you guys know, Dallas went on to beat Buffalo, and Devlin was on that Buffalo team in the Super Bowl that year. But yeah, we went out and got destroyed by San Francisco, but we made it the second round of the playoffs. We never made the playoffs again in the following 3 years I was with the Giants, and I think that's why Coach Reeves got let go. But also in '93, you guys obviously know that's when collective bargaining began, free agency. Prior to '93, that's when Reggie White left Philly to go to Green Bay. So that really gave Dallas and San Francisco a big advantage because for whatever reason, their rosters were built. They were able to bring in the Deion Sanders, the Ken Nortons, more so than everybody else's. But most people don't realize my first year in the NFL was the first year the NFL players had free agency. But what was I going to say? So we have these alumni get-togethers, and LT comes and still jokes around with me. He's like, hey, you got a dip on you? We went to dinner one night. Everybody came back to the Sheraton where the Giants put all the players up. And the next morning, this particular alumni get-together was to honor Michael Strahan and his induction into the Hall of Fame. So the next morning, we were going to the Michael and Kelly show in New York, and the bus was leaving at like 6. Whoever wanted to go. And of course, Michael was in my draft class, and we'd been friends. And so we're back at the hotel after dinner. It's getting to be about 12 o'clock. The bus arrives from dinner. Everybody walks into the bar and kind of makes a big circle around a table. And I'm sitting by Brian Williams and some other old Giants legends, Mark Collins, and LT sits down on the other side of the table, and there just happens to be an empty chair there. Kelly, my wife, had gone out and stayed outside to call our boys to make sure her mom was getting them to bed and they were okay. So she comes in about 10 minutes after we'd all sat down, got drinks, and we're shooting shit. And the only chair is by LT. So she sits down next to LT, and different guys are talking and everybody's contributing and laughing, going back and forth talking. And I can't hear what they're saying because they're on the other side of a big brown table. And all night long, I'm like, what the heck could they possibly be talking about? The bartenders come over and they're like, all right, guys, we're shutting down the outside area. If you want a drink, you got to come up to the bar, but this back area is going to be shut down. And I kind of stand up. I'm like, Kel, you ready for bed? I'm like, we got to get up early to get into the Michael and Kelly show. And LT's kind of looking at me. He's like, Scooter, this is your wife? I'm like, yeah, it's my wife. And he's like, all right, man, clearly you outkicked your coverage, or I made some comment like that. And I'm thinking he had no idea. I think he just thought it was just some woman who wanted to sit down and shoot the shit with him. But anyways, we're walking to the elevator, Kelly, and I'm like, do you realize you just sat with LT, an NFL legend, for an hour and had a conversation with him, and I've never even come close to that. And she's like, oh, he's just like the rest of you. And I'm like, no, he's not just like the rest of us. He is a legend. He's an immortal. And she's like, no, he's just a nice guy. And at that time, my oldest son was 10, and we'd won the New Jersey American Youth Football Championships, and we were going to be going to Florida to play in Orlando. I'm like, what were you guys talking about? And she was like, I was talking to him about our team you coach and how we're going to be going to Florida. And he says he's going to come up and visit us. And he gave me his cell number. And I'm just like, oh my God, he's not coming to talk. And she's like, I have his number too. I'm going to call him when we get down there. And I'm like, you're not going to call him. You're going to leave him alone. You know what I mean? And anyways, it was just her mindset compared to the rest. As if he really wanted to talk about a 10-year-old youth football team. You know what I mean? Like crazy. I have a picture from them from that night, and it's one of the best pictures ever. Just a smile on both their faces. And then that same weekend, I was able to bring Jake, my oldest, to the game, and LT had his yellow jacket on, and I got a picture of Jake and LT in one of the VIP booths.
Nice.
Really good stuff.
That's great. I was at the Jets a little later, and so was some of those probably leftovers. Jumbo was there.
Yeah.
And who's the linebacker from Ohio State? Pepper Johnson.
Oh, yeah.
Pepper
He was
Johnson
probably
was
one
on
of the
the.
coaches by then, right? Or was
He
he
was
still
actually like,
playing?
there was one of his last years playing. Yeah,
Ooh,
exactly. And they would tell stories about, they're like, it just depends on which guy showed up at practice. Some days he'd be like with his shoes untied and be standing around until someone would piss him off, and then he would just annihilate whoever he was playing against. And so just his ability to just come in and turn it on and turn it off, it was
right.
immense. And I think being that sort of talent, you get that leeway to do whatever you want. Coaches are a little more like, okay, everybody, he's going to
Yeah.
be that way today. They couldn't talk to him like by Tuesday of game week because his mind was already just in that focus and stuff.
That mode.
Yeah.
So did you guys take advantage of the reservoir, going out to Coralville, the cliff jumping and swimming at the beach out there while you were playing?
We did. I didn't cliff jump, but we were out the res
You
quite
know
a bit.
where they
Yeah.
were, the cliffs to jump off of.
I don't know if I remember
I
across the
don't
way.
think so.
I couldn't tell you how we got there, but like we got there at one point. Just talking about you're in Iowa and you do run out of things to do. You try to take people like I think Jason Dumont took a bunch of guys hunting one time. That might have been one of Ferroni's stories, but they were literally just looking for anything to shoot. They all had shotguns, so we always planned it so that we had the same days off and the same days we'd be at work at the same time. And I just remember somebody showed us these cliffs, and they had to be at least 3 stories. And I don't know who went first. He had to wear shoes, and each of us went off, I don't know, 4 or 5 times, and then you'd swim back to the side and climb back up. There was a way to climb back up. And I just remember like the next week, we were in the shower and our rear ends were literally all black and blue from the impact of hitting the water. If you did a cannonball, you were screwed. It was bad, but other times we'd go out to the beach and bring a cooler. And funny story, I wanted to make sure I got this one in. So it's Devlin, Ferroni, Moose, and I. And this is when we learned Moose couldn't swim.
Who's Moose for those?
Marty Baldwin.
Marty, yeah.
We're out there, we're getting some sun, and probably a kind of weird for offensive linemen. Most offensive linemen probably don't want to get sun, but for whatever reason, we wanted to get tan. So we're sitting on the beach and we decide to swim out to the edge of the ropes. They kind of have the swimming area roped off. Devlin, Ferroni, and I were all good swimmers, and we just assumed Moose was too. If he's going to swim out to the deepest area of where the ropes are. And I want to say we headed out there, and there was something that you could hang out on, like a platform. And we all swam out there, and I want to say Moose swam out with one of those, it was like a noodle or a floaty or something. And we didn't think anything of it. And we're out there hanging out. And I honestly can't remember whether it was me, and I was a lifeguard usually in the summer times when I was in Iowa at the town pool. I can't remember whether I did it or Ferroni did it. I want to say Ferroni did it, but he took the float and he started heading back in. And I remember Moose saying, guys, like, I need the float. I can't swim. And we're like, yeah, whatever. And we always just thought he was lazy about stuff every now and then. And we're like, yeah, whatever, Moose. You can make it. It's not that far. So the next thing you know, we're all like getting out of the water, Devlin, Ferroni, and I, and we see Moose start to make his way, like gets off the platform and he's starting to swim. And we're walking back to our towels. And of course, there's other people out there laying out. And he's like, guys, he's waving his arm. Come on, man, help me out. I need the float. And we're like, whatever, suck it up. Let's go. Stop playing around. And he's screaming at us. Like, now it's almost like a death scream. I guess there were some Iowa baseball players on the beach, and they go sprinting out there because there was no lifeguard on the Coralville Lake. It's just an area that they rope off to swim. And these baseball players and the girls they were there with start to scream, and these baseball players go swimming out there, and they get Moose in, and he's like spitting up water and coughing, and he just starts screaming and cursing at us. And basically, I can't swim. I told you guys I can't swim. And these girls are like, these are your friends? These assholes let you freaking, they took your floaty. And the baseball guys are like, man, you guys are ruthless. I mean, we just got torn up by these baseball players and their girlfriends for basically almost letting our friend die, thinking he was crying wolf on his way in from the reservoirs. Oh my God. And then the funny thing is, after my rookie season with the Giants and after Devlin was done at the Super Bowl, we all went to the Bahamas, and I flew Moose down to the Bahamas, and Devlin flew Ferroni down to the Bahamas, and the four of us, and Devlin and I felt, all right, we just finished our rookie years. Let's hook up with our best friends, and we went to the Bahamas for like 5 days, and we wanted to go scuba diving, and you got to get trained to go down to 30 feet, and we knew Moose couldn't swim. So we're on our way to the scuba lesson, and basically all you have to do is be able to clear your mask underwater. The instructor would pull your mask away, and you had to be able to stay underwater, tilt your mask, blow through your nose, and that forces the water out of your mask. And as soon as the instructor would pull the mask away from Moose, he'd just start flailing his arms and panicking, and it's, no, just relax. You got this. He wouldn't pass him, rightfully so. We're like, hey, listen, here's $50. Just let him come with us. We'll keep him under control underwater. We'll get him to relax. Nobody's going to pull his mask when we're actually down there scuba diving. And I think I was the first one to go down. And you're wearing a weighted belt, and you got to just really be able to remain calm and understand everything's going to be all right. And so I'm sitting on the bottom, and it's the Caribbean, it's the Bahamas, it's clear as day. I can see the bottom of the boat, and I see the Moose falls back and in, and he's gradually coming down. And then all of a sudden, you can just tell he's not meant to have a weighted belt on and a scuba mask, and he just starts flailing, and he gets up to the top. And it was just like, he ended up snorkeling above us while we were scuba diving down below, which was great that he got to do that with us. But we tortured that kid. I tell you what, there was some other stuff we've done over the years, but between breaking into his room to play, I forget the video. I wasn't a video game guy, but everybody had I don't think it was whatever came out before Nintendo. It was even before Xbox. I forget, but he had it in his room. And neither Ferroni, Devlin, or I had it, so we wanted to play. We'd have to break into his room, and we'd bust out the vents. In Slater Hall, you had the doors and the vents down below, and we'd kick out the vents, reach up, unlock his door, and go in there and play his video games when he wasn't around. Nobody could beat Dane and Hughes in Tecmo Bowl.
Bo Jackson.
Bo Jackson.
Nintendo. That was early Nintendo, wasn't it? Yeah, the really simple.
Yeah, so then
Jerry Rice, like there was plays you just couldn't stop.
Once the spark of an idea is lit, the fire catches, and given the fuel it needs, the flame grows. For those who are motivated to do something great, it doesn't matter where you come from or how you get started. That fuel comes from within. In Templeton, Iowa, our fire was lit generations ago. Today, it burns brighter than ever, fueled by the idea that every glass of a Templeton rye whiskey creates an opportunity for your own spark to ignite.
I was fortunate enough, my first year, we went to the Peach Bowl, stayed at the downtown Marriott in Atlanta there. Nothing real eventful from that, other than it was like my first pig roast where you just go up and rip meat off. The pig's right there, and you just rip meat off. They eat. Played in the old Fulton County Stadium there. The weather was crappy down there. But I'll tell you, getting those practices in leading up to the bowl game is where the younger guys really get a chance to show what they got. It's almost like a pre-spring ball opportunity, because I remember getting some reps with the twos even in that early time period, and then that set me up for spring ball after my redshirt year to actually get an opportunity to play and get real reps. I can remember Bill Brazier bringing Ferroni and I up off the scout team to do linebacker drills with Brad Quast and Jim Riley and Melvin Foster. And literally, Ferroni and I would take turns. It was just Ferroni and I. And he'd be like, all right, I want you to reach left. And he'd be in the linebacker stance. We'd be down in our guard stance. And he'd be like, I want you to reach right. And we'd take off to the right. And they would literally come up and treat us like a blocking dummy. Just come up and rock our world, working their technique. And then I'd go back, get behind Ferroni go with the next guy, and I would come up, do it again. And I can tell you, those were some of the heaviest hits that I ever, even in the pros, never hit anybody like that. Literally, you're 8 yards away from a starting all Big Ten linebacker, and you're doing one-on-one drills with him. You know what I mean? And it's not game conditions, literally practice conditions. And I remember with the Giants going through warm-ups, first day of training camp, went first drill, Oklahoma drill, right into Oklahoma drill. First thing we did, not any individual offensive line. Nope. First drill, Oklahoma drill. It was like that pretty much every practice for the first few days. Usually we went 3 days, 2 days, and then there'd be a scrimmage day, and then we'd maybe have an off day. I think that's usually how our weeks went during training camp. I don't know if you guys remember, but at Iowa in the early 90s, the scout team, we just took a beating. I remember Stoops was a defensive grad assistant. We had Rhino. Dad was the baseball coach. What the heck was his first and last name? I just remember him as Rhino. But we had 2 groups of scout team. And the thing I hated about scout team as a redshirt freshman is if you won that play, if I had to pull and trap Joe Mott and I did a good job, you had to run it again. Guess how happy Joe Mott is. What do you think he's thinking? Oh, this redshirt freaking freshman just pulled and got a good block on me. Now he knows it's coming, first of all. And it's like he's got Bernie Wyatt screaming at him because a redshirt freshman just put a good block on him. And I think Bernie mentioned a lot of that. Blocking Dave Haight, Jim Johnson, Matt Rulin, Jeff Keppel, Mike Burke was the other defensive end I remember pulling and trapping. And if you got a good block on him, you had to do it again. But yeah, I don't think they torture kids like that anymore. I don't, do they even have scout teams? If you were a kid on a scout team, wouldn't you be wanting to put your name on a transfer portal? I can tell you, after being on the scout team and having to do individual drills with linebackers, I can promise you my name would have been in the transfer portal after my first year. I would have been like, no freaking way. But you didn't know any better. You just did it. You thought this is how it is.
I remember we were in the offensive camp because we were like in the tight end rooms. And so like the difference between that, like the scout team, and then you had Brett Bielema, who was the coach for that side. It was just always something going on. Always somebody had gotten somebody and there was retribution, the spirit of getting better. But it was just a scrum every practice. Like you guys getting in fights.
Those grad assistants would get you so worked up. And even Coach Fry would come down, me and Ted Velliser, the baby bulls, Marty Baldwin. We were like the baby bulls. We were the 5 offensive linemen of that recruiting class. And then they ended up moving Bob Reese over to us too from tight end, but that wasn't until a couple years later. And it's funny, we were probably the shortest group of offensive linemen that had ever come through the University of Iowa as a group, as a 88 recruiting class, because Ferroni was 6'1", Devlin was 6'2", I was 6'3", Ted Velliser was 6'4". Bob Reese was a 6'5" tight end, but then they ended up moving him to tackle for his last 2 years. When Iowa would go to Penn State or Iowa comes to Rutgers, I go to the games or try to get to the games, and I see the size of the guys. It's just none of them are under. Maybe they'll allow the center to be 6'3", but like guards, tackles, they're all 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". They're all huge. It's crazy. Arm length. Devlin had alligator arms. I have no idea how he was as good as he was, All-American, All-Big Ten, and his arms, I swear to God, couldn't have been longer than that. When he went on to have a good professional career, just feisty. We were all, if I could say one thing about our group, man, we would be as nasty as you had to play to get the job done. And we had to play that way because we didn't have the physical talent that a lot of other players have. We were undersized. If you consider 6'1", 280, 285 undersized. I remember Jim McNally, the offensive line coach from Cincinnati, came to work Devlin and I out prior to the draft. And Devlin and I went against each other and we just beat the hell out of each other just to show them toughness and make each other work hard and give Coach McNally a good idea who we were. And basically, after we tore into one another for an hour, he's like, good luck, fellas. I like to recruit linemen that are all at least 6'5". You guys are a little short for me, but I appreciate your work ethic. And we were thinking, looking at each other, is this guy for real? Should we run him into the bathroom and give him a swirly right now? Is he serious? Beating the hell out of us for an hour? Like, only to tell us, sorry, you're not my physical type that I want on my offensive line. It's like, oh my God, man.
Could have said that an hour ago.
Yeah, exactly. But no, very fortunate in our 5 years. Peach Bowl, like I said. Then when we went to the Rose Bowl, we got to go to the Playboy Mansion, like the scene Beverly Hills Cop 2 when they're at the Playboy Mansion. The pools, the underwater cavern jacuzzis, just incredible. Now, it wasn't the Playboy Mansion with all the girls running around. It was when he was married to Kimberly Conrad. But how weird is it to go to some guy's house? I think it was Christmas Eve, and like his wife left, and we got to pretty much just walk around wherever. Devlin and I got our arm around Hugh Hefner in front of his Christmas tree. It's like one of the few autographs I ever got. There's Playboy magazines all over the place, and I just had him sign one, and I'm like, I didn't know what to do. I'm like, will you sign one of your magazines for me? But we took pictures, and if there was a game room, there'd be like 4 bedrooms off to the side of the game room, like little beds and mirrors, and it was just a really different way of living, so to say. But we got to go there. We had the Lowry's Bowl where we versus Washington. I think we won the Lowry's Bowl. We ate more prime rib than them, and you could definitely tell in the game their speed compared to ours. But one of the things with the Rose Bowl was we got to go out a week early because our bubble collapsed, and that was back in the day when the TV show Coach was very popular, Craig T. Nelson. And he came to practice a couple of times. It was good to meet him. Really cool. And one night, again, I was 20 years old. I wasn't even old enough to go into. Same with Ferroni and Devlin. None of us were old enough to be in a bar, but somehow we got into one bar one night. Like Junior Seau was sitting in the corner, and we thought that was like really cool. Again, we're college students from Iowa. We didn't have any money. So you had to be real particular about where we went in terms of if there was a cover charge. Nah. But I can tell you, we went down to the Balboa Peninsula area, the beach area, and went into a couple beach bars there. And man, the people that own those bars were so accommodating. Oh, we got the Iowa Hawkeye football team here. And people would start screaming, yelling, clapping, and they'd buy drinks. And people were so nice. When we went to San Diego, of course, a group of us had to make our way down to Tijuana. Nothing bad happened down there. We all made it down there and back without any type of incarceration. So we were real fortunate in terms of 3 bowl games in 5 years. We started off our senior year with a kickoff classic, which is like a bowl game. To end our senior year without a bowl game was a little disappointing, a lot disappointing. Just felt like we had a better crew than that. I think our class was probably average talent. We didn't have any superstars. And we were like kind of like the base that helped when we were sophomores. We really helped support the juniors and seniors. You know what I mean? Those classes, I think we were able to fill in the needed holes. And I think by the time we got to be seniors, I don't know if we had the same depth. It's a shame because that group, I can tell you, that group of players worked as hard as any group that, at least that I saw in my 5 years there. It was never a question of that group doesn't work very hard. We just didn't have any superstars. Even Mike, who was an All-American captain, Brett Bielema was the other captain on defense. They were just blue-collar, hardworking guys. Mike was the first one to go in our draft class, and he went in the 5th round, and then I went in the 6th, and I want to say Danon went in the 7th. So it wasn't like we were littered with a huge amount of talent, but would have been nice to get one more bowl game in for sure.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. We'd look at some of those other teams and you would see, like you were saying, depth. You'd see 3 or 4 guys that were just like one guy would go down, the next guy come in looking exactly the
Just as
same.
good. Yeah.
Good. And so I think our team, at least, we had the top level. And then once you got past that, you just didn't have the depth. And I think seasons could swing certain ways, like you get in a rut or people get hurt. And the average fan kind of, whoa, why didn't those guys do well that year? And we're like, things had to go well for our teams, at least, like, to win games and those kind of things.
Margin of error.
It's like you just didn't have the ability to be like, okay, we lost a guy, or these
Injury is detrimental.
It's like guys come in and be like,
or it just takes a
athletes,
while
but
to
just
develop our guys versus
didn't
some
have-
guys can walk in and just play right away in other schools.
And you guys played pretty early, right?
I just remember I was able to play early because the two guards, mainly, I'm pretty sure it was Mike Miller and Jim Poynton, were both hurt, significant injuries. And I forget who got hurt. Mike Devlin. I don't remember Bill Anderson getting hurt, but Mike played all but 2 games. Maybe not that many. Maybe started all but 4 games our freshman year. I remember we were playing Michigan at home, and it was like the referees just. Mike said to me at one point, like, "This is bullshit. They both know we're freshmen. They're calling us for holding every other play. This is bullshit." And they were. And I remember, I'm pretty sure it was that game, I was having to block Aiden Hutchinson's dad, Steve Hutchinson, who was a captain on Michigan's Big Ten team. I think they won it that year. It's weird now seeing Aiden Hutchinson, and I'd tell my boys, I had to block his dad. His dad was at Michigan. Jeff Nelson, Nelly, was in our class, D lineman, seeing his son do so well, Anthony at Iowa, and then make it to Tampa Bay and play. I really enjoy it when I see guys I either played against or guys I played with. Now their sons are, like when I was with the Giants, Brion Williams was one of my closest friends at center, and he's from Minnesota. And his son Max played at Minnesota and got drafted. And he was with Baltimore and Arizona. And he's been with a few teams. I can remember going to Brian's house for dinner, him and Rochelle, and Max was bouncing around the couch, a little kid. And it's like he's all tatted up, playing in the NFL as a tight end.
Yeah.
I told you we were at the beach today, and for whatever reason, we're usually beach bums every weekend, and we finally got up there today, and I'm looking at the little kids in the waves with their boogie boards, and I've got 2 monsters I have to feed right now. Justin's a senior and Jake's a senior in college, but I can remember out there and pushing them and making sure they were okay and safe, swimming and teaching them how to swim and just playing with them in the waves. And now here I am, the old man standing there looking at other people's kids. Mine are at the beach, the fun beach where all the girls are at. They're not with mom and dad at the old people beach, so to say. It's amazing how fast time flies.
Are they playing football?
Jake's in high school, he was our quarterback and safety. And he was one of the kids that COVID really screwed up. Some schools were playing, some weren't. He only got 6 games in his junior year, couldn't visit schools because the campuses were closed. But luckily, they opened up campuses to do football camps prior to his senior year. So we went on a big camp run around the Northeast at all these different schools, and Penn offered. And there were going to be some other schools that were going to offer. But he committed to Penn because he really hit it off well with the coaches, but they recruited him as a linebacker. And if you looked at him, he was 6'3", 185 pounds, and he was just ripped. And you knew he was going to be 220 in no time at all, which is pretty much what happened. But he's bounced from linebacker to now. I think he's going to get quite a bit of playing time at defensive end, what they call edge rusher this year for his final year. And I'm hoping what he always wanted to do was have a really good year and potentially do a graduate year like in Iowa, just to see what it's like to play big time football. But he's had a great experience at Penn. One of the kids he competed against in high school also is a linebacker there. They were on the same travel lacrosse team. We know the parents. I say every kid that gets the opportunity to continue playing after high school is very fortunate. It's nothing better to be a part of a team. For the rest of your life, you got your teammates to rely on and help you and guide you and be there for you. And to me, that's really special. And the same with my youngest, who's going to be a senior. He has an offer from Cornell and Bucknell, and I think he's going to end up with 3 or 4 more offers. He's a tight end, edge rusher too. He's 6'2", 230. And They're perfect for the schools they have here in the Northeast. Get a good education, keep playing, get an opportunity to play, and enjoy your time before the real world begins. One of the kids I coached, youth, went to Colgate, tore it up there for 3 years, and then Central Florida just gave him $200,000 to be a linebacker there for his senior year. It's just like the money that's being thrown around is just nuts. One of Jake's high school teammates who played baseball went to Duke on a half scholarship, did very well, then went to Ole Miss, and LSU wanted him. He ended up going to Ole Miss for a full ride, $500,000 to play baseball and a car. Then he does very well. Then goes to Tennessee this year, $750,000, car, full ride. He's made $1.2 million, and he's going to be a senior in baseball, college. What?
Unreal.
What's going on? It's nuts.
A lot different than the Rose Bowl per diem money each
Yeah,
night.
oh gosh. Streefer having a sign for the per diem. I love Streefer. Miss that guy. Ed
Crowley.
too. The trainer, I know he surely is retired by now, but I'm
Yep.
sure you had Ed when you were there as well, right?
Yep.
Ed,
Yeah.
and who was the dark-haired trainer?
Russ.
Yeah, Russ. And then Beefer and I just hooked up with K4. He was out here with the Iowa baseball team a couple springs ago to play Rutgers. We hooked up with K4. It's good to see him. And I took Justin and some of his buddies to the Rutgers Iowa game. I want to say maybe 2 years ago. And again, they're out on the field pregame warmups. And I just couldn't get over the size of like our tight ends and our linebackers. And Jack Campbell was out there, and I forget who the tight ends were, but they were all 6'5", 6'6". And it's like, oh my God. It's a different world. It really is.
When you were getting recruited in high school, talk us through that a little bit. Was Ferentz part of that recruiting, and was he still there that first year you were there?
Yeah, he was the offensive line coach, and it really began my recruiting for football. And I'd always gone to Nebraska and Iowa's camps, their football camps in the summer, pretty regularly. And I knew they were starting to show interest after my junior year of football camp. And then it was like my father, because I grew up in a single parent household, just my mom and I. And he was really like a father figure for me, unbeknownst to me when I was in high school. But now later in life, truly like the father I didn't have. And Leonard Griffith. But I won the state title in the shot and disc and won Drake Relay's shot and disc. And that's what really, because the thing that everybody has now is technology and media exposure. You didn't have that in 1987. Your high school coach literally had to take your VCR tapes and send them to schools that you told him you were interested in. And I think that media exposure in the Des Moines Register, oh, this kid's a Drake Relays winner, 2-event winner, wins the state high school shot put and discus. And then, so that was my junior year. That gave me a lot of media exposure going into my senior year. So the summer leading into my senior year, they offered me. So I accepted right away. Or no, I think I went to the Iowa-Michigan game, and there were like 12 recruits of us, 12 recruits there. And I do remember like Lad Wessels and some other guys that ended up committing, Doug Book. Didn't know it at the time who they were because you just didn't have phones at your fingertips. But what really took me back right at that game was I don't even think I had a name badge on. And every single coach that came down the stairs leading out to the field, we were at the bottom of the stairs. Every single coach said, "Scott, thanks for coming. Hope you choose Iowa." Every coach knew my name. And to compare that to getting recruited by Nebraska, John Melton was the linebackers, Coach Osborne. I was one of like 100 recruits. We all had name badges, and Nebraska happened to be playing UCLA. I had my jacket over my name badge, and every coach that came up to me had to they could see the edge of my name badge. They couldn't see my name, and then move my jacket over. Oh, Scott, nobody knew my name. And it really struck me as I'm like one of 100 guys here. They don't know my name. I went to Iowa, didn't even have a name badge on, and they knew every single guy. There was only 12 of us, but they knew all of our names. That really helped make up my mind where I wanted to go. And then I got invited to the Iowa State Iowa game, and the only reason I went is so I could go see Coach Ferentz. And I was out on the field, and I was hanging out with the Iowa O-line as they were stretching and warming up, talking to Coach Ferentz. And he's like, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm here on an Iowa State visit." But I'm like, "I only came because they're playing you guys, and I wanted to see you guys." He was cracking up, and he's like, "I think you probably better get over there with the rest of the recruits on the Iowa State sideline." I'm like, "All right, yeah, I just want to come over and say hello." But yeah, no, and then Coach Fry and Coach Snyder came to my house. I think they came to one of my high school basketball games. I don't want to say it was my junior year. And then Coach Fry came. Can't remember when him and Coach Snyder came, but I remember my mom had made him a chocolate pie. They came to our house in Glenwood and sat down at the kitchen table. And Coach Fry's hell of a salesman, and he didn't need to sell me or my mom on the program. He just wanted to ensure we were comfortable with us and me going to Iowa. And that was really a special time. But yeah, that's how I ended up choosing Iowa. And I went there for my official visit. I had Dave Turner as my host, and I looked up to Dave and I saw all the accolades Dave got through high school and even looked at him like, geez, he's 6'4", 270 pounds. I'm 6'3", 225, and I play center and tackle. And mainly, I really love to play linebacker. And I really wanted to play linebacker in college. But I think everybody could see I was 6'3", 225 pounds, but very lean with a lot of potential to grow. And so, yeah, when I was at the Nebraska UCLA game, I was watching the UCLA linebackers, and they had Ken Norton Jr. And when I tell you he was a man amongst boys, when I saw his arms, they were like watermelons, man. His biceps, and I was just like, holy crap, this is big time. I got a lot of growing to do. When I would go to Nebraska's football camps, it was awesome working out because they had the latest and greatest state-of-the-art facility. Boyd Epley, the strength coach, they pioneered strength training. Like they were the top of the heap in terms of college football strength training. And I remember seeing Danny Noonan in there working out, doing 225 military press like it was nothing. I remember they had another nose guard. I can't remember his name, but they had that Neil Smith. And I'm like, holy crap. He's 6'6", 260, and he runs like a 4.5 40. If you remember Neil Smith, unreal. He was a first-round draft pick at Kansas City and had a really good pro career. But growing up in a Hawkeye 8 conference in Southwest Iowa, I really had a hard time envisioning myself, even though it was my dream to be an NFL player. I just always felt like I'm never going to be big enough, strong enough, fast enough. I always felt like I could do it, but I just knew how much work was going to be involved, and I was willing to do it. But really, track and field is what really exposed me to other programs. Iowa State, Minnesota, those were the main schools that were recruiting me out of high school. When Mike Devlin ends up being my roommate in college, first day we move into Slater Hall, he walks in and I have a flannel on, jeans, cowboy boots. He has a flannel on, jeans, cowboy boots, and he's talking like he's from the South. And I'm like, where are you from? He's like, New Jersey, Cherokee High School. I'm like, where's that at? He's like, South Jersey, outside of Philly. And I'm like, that's weird. And then Ferroni walks in. He's already got his jersey on, 55, big gold chain, big 55 gold emblem, license plate basically hanging from his head, hair all slicked back. And he's like, Devil, how you doing? Because they knew each other from being in New Jersey. I'm like, who's this guy? He acts like he's already been on the team and owns a storm or something. He had his own room. You talk about spoiled. Come on. Devlin and I bunking up together. Ferroni's got his own room.
You're like, how are these two both from New Jersey?
And you know the story. Of course, that happened within 2 weeks of school starting, practice. When I packed up my pickup to drive to Iowa City and move in, our local grocery store, Kyman's, the two owners were huge Iowa Hawkeye fans and big supporters, boosters. And every time I go in that store, my mom would go in there. It's 15-minute conversation about the Hawkeyes. It was awesome. And at one point, I always went from football, basketball to track, and then I worked either on my grandpa's farm in the summer, or I was a lifeguard at the town pool. So I didn't have a lot of free time, but I don't know how it came about, but they offered me, they're like, oh, if you want to take some milk crates to pack up your stuff to take to school, help yourself. So I was viewed that as, well, they're worthless. They're no different than a cardboard box. So I loaded up my stuff, brought it up to the dorm room, unpacked it all, and now I got all these freaking milk crates. I'm like, what am I going to do with these? So I built like a headboard that puts alarm clock and whatever in, and in the closet, you put your socks, underwear, whatever. And Ferroni comes in, he's like, hey, where'd you guys get the milk crates? I'm like, dude, you can go to any grocery store and they're always outside, out back, outside the building. You could just take them if whatever you need. So there we went down to the local Hy-Vee, and I loaded up my truck, middle of the day, no worries. Didn't think it was a crime. Brought him back. He built a nice headboard. He had a water bed. It had his own room, had a water bed, built his own little contraption headboard. I get the call a couple days later, come down to the Johnson County Sheriff's Department. I'm like, for what? Oh, do you have a brown Nissan truck? I'm like, yeah. License plate? Yeah. One of the Hy-Vee workers reported you stealing milk crates from the back of their store. And I'm like, really? I'm like, that's a law? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, well, listen, can I just bring them down? Can I just return them? And they're like, yeah, bring them on down. And I brought them on down. The next thing you know, as soon as I'd unpacked my truck, they're like, put your hands behind your back. You're under arrest. I'm like, for what? I just returned these milk crates. Next thing, I'm in the slammer and don't know what to do. Had to go and appear in front of a judge. I pleaded guilty, I think, because I'd taken them and returned them. And then I think I called Mike, told him to call my mom, whatever. I got released. I think I got released without even any bail or anything. And I didn't even have to go back to court. It ended up getting all wiped away. Coach Fry made a couple phone calls, and I went to the dairy company to apologize because it belonged to, they were their crates. And then I went to Hy-Vee to apologize to the store manager. And it was Mr. Woods, who ended up being like our surrogate father away from home. And that's who we worked for in our next 3 summers there. It's never good to be the guy that has the vehicle freshman year, because then you're helping other people, giving rides, getting to class. Can you pick me up? Can you bring me home from the bar? Can you take me to 7-Eleven? You're the one with the vehicle. It's better to know somebody with a boat than to actually own the boat. Like, we're 2 miles from the beach, and my wife always wanted a swimming pool. And I'm like, why would we have a swimming pool when we're going to go to the beach every weekend? As it turns out, our neighbors to the right and our neighbors to the left both have swimming pools, and we're great friends with them. Literally, whenever we want to go to the swimming pool, we just walk next door. I guess that's just how I am, but definitely wasn't good being the one guy out of my recruiting class that had a vehicle our freshman year. I got tagged with doing a lot of stuff.
Unless you like meeting everybody and being their friend.
Yeah.
Funny.
How big a town is where you grew up? I've heard of a
So-
lot of Iowa towns. When I looked it up, I was like, wait, that one escaped
Yeah,
me.
so Glenwood's about a town. I graduated with 120 kids in my senior class. It's a town of about 8,000. I was born in Winterset, Iowa. And then my mom got a job in Glenwood at State Hospital School as a medical records administrator. So we moved to Glenwood, and I guess it was probably first grade, and then ended up graduating from there. But yeah, no, we played our big, I don't know if we had a real big rival. We always played Red Oak for homecoming because we knew we could beat them. And then Shenandoah, Clarinda, Lewis Central was a big school, pretty big rival. Harlan was always the best team in the conference, Coach Blatt. And then Atlantic was always pretty good back then. Those were our main rivals. And I ended up starting as a freshman at center, and I don't think we won a game that year. That was Coach Todd Rocker was the head coach at that time. At that time in Glenwood, the ninth graders were at the middle school. So it was like seventh, eighth, and ninth grade was at the middle school. And then the high school was just sophomores, juniors, and seniors. That was my freshman year. So I was playing in freshman football games on Wednesday. Then I was playing on varsity games on Friday. And then they had me playing on JV games on Monday. After a couple of weeks, the athletic director figured out that I'm going to run out of eligibility. You can't play in both the varsity and the JV and the freshman game. So then I was just doing freshman and varsity games. So I was wearing my jersey twice a week to school. It was weird. It seemed like I always had a jersey on. But then my sophomore year, I played center and linebacker. We had Coach Brian Albert came in, really good coach. Love Coach Albert, his wife Robin, just salt of the earth people. Really good coach, good motivator. And we had a real good athletic senior class that year. My best friend was Steve Anderson, and Scott Barrett was a quarterback. And we won, I want to say, I think we won 4 or 5 games, which was a big deal in Glenwood because we didn't have a really strong football program. Then my junior year, I played tackle and linebacker, and I think we won maybe 2 games my junior year. And then my senior year, we did pretty well. We had a good group. We had a good running back, Marty Cheney, another good lineman, Sam Carr. I want to say I think we won 5 games that year. Maybe we were like 5-7 or 5-6. I try to tell my boys, because my oldest son, they were on his junior year, they're number 1 team ranked in New Jersey. Now they only got to play 6 or 8 games, I forget. For whatever reason, they didn't even have playoffs, but they were loaded. There's a kid at Army, the safety there was our running back, just loaded with D1 talent. And in Jake's class, those kids that I coached in youth football, they had at least 7 D1 athletes, whether it be for lacrosse or football, but they all played lacrosse and football. Yeah, now here we are with Justin's group. I coached Justin's group from 6th grade through, let's see, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. I coached their group, and now he's going to be a senior. Since football ended, it was tough. I got right into pharmaceutical sales, so I was kind of lucky in that regard. When I tore up my knee in 95, and I'm laying in the hospital bed, Hospital for Special Surgery in New Jersey, and I'm looking at my leg, and it's that big around. I'm like, I'm never going to be able to play football again. That off season when I was rehabbing, I called up a career counselor, a friend of mine. And then the Giants, one of the PR people, her dad was an HR director at Nabisco, which was right by my house. She's like, going to meet with my dad, Wade. He'll give you some good career advice. So I went in and met with Wade. We had a great talk. And he's like, listen, unless you want to sell cookies and crackers the rest of your life, why don't you go meet my friend Andy, who's a career counselor? And I'm like, yeah, I don't think I want to sell Oreos and Ritz crackers. It's Nabisco. So I went and met with Andy, and his wife happened to work for a really good pharmaceutical company. So that off season, I spent some time spending times with a pharmaceutical rep, calling on doctors and just signing autographs. The rep that I was working with took me into all of his big accounts, and so I got a real New York Giants football player I'm coming in with. So that opened a lot of doors for him. But then I knew right then, I'm like, man, and I always had an interest in drugs and how they work in the body and physiology. And I'm like, man, I think I really love being a pharmaceutical rep. I can't believe they pay you that much money and give you a car and 401k and bonus. And all you have to do is walk around and explain drugs to doctors. So that's what I ended up doing. Luckily, I was able to come back from my knee before the pec tear ended things for me. I literally retired in like February of 98. Met my wife at Ferroni's wedding that summer and left his wedding early to go take a pharmacological exam for SmithKline Beecham out at JFK Airport Marriott the next day. So Ferroni got married on a Sunday, and I had to take that test on Monday. And passed the test, got hired, worked in Manhattan. It was like just incredible. I'm working in New York City on Fifth Avenue, Madison Avenue, looking at the buildings and the architecture, huffing around with a suit on, carrying a sample bag, stopping in, talking to orthopedic surgeons, dermatologists. I had a wide range of doctors that I had to call on, but it was great. I ended up coming back to New Jersey, working for a biotech company that got bought by Pfizer. Towards the end of my pharmaceutical career was with Pfizer selling a drug for HIV and AIDS. And then the FDA implemented all those guidelines where no more fun with the doctors at steak dinners and basketball games and football games, which was good because that was right around 2004. And my son Jake was born. And when you have a baby at home, spending nights out, being out late, not conducive necessarily to a great marriage. But that's when I decided to go to work for All Side selling building materials. And I've pretty much done that for the last 20 years. Since about 2007 to now. I work for ABC Supply Company now. They're based out of Beloit, Wisconsin. They might know the name Diane Hendrickson. I think she's the wealthiest woman in the United States. She's the owner of ABC Supply. It's worth $23 billion. So you'll see her show. They're doing a campaign in Beloit to rebuild all the old houses. She's doing a lot of great things with her philanthropy and the money they've made since her and her husband started the company, and I think in 1983. It's really a great story. American company, just that's not that old. It just literally they just began the company in 83. Working for my grandfather in Winterset, they had about a 500-acre farm, and I'd bring Devlin and Ferroni home for Thanksgiving because they didn't have time to fly back to New Jersey, nor really the money. And they'd come back home. My grandpa would always take us out, and we'd pick up hay and put it in the barn and feed the cows and the pigs. And a lot of times we'd go visit them in the summertime when, you know, how Iowa summers in August, how hot it is. Getting acclimated to just working hard in heat all day long. I can remember, I think my 7th and 8th grade summers, I spent a month with my grandparents, and my grandpa was the Madison County weed commissioner. And we'd load up in a pickup truck at 7 o'clock in the morning, a bunch of kids my age, like 10 of us, and we all had corn machetes. And we'd be sharpening our machetes as we headed to a farmer's field. And we'd literally just cut musk thistles from 7 o'clock in the morning till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Or sunflowers, invasive species, weeds that would take over farms if you didn't either spray them or cut them down. Once farmers got a warning from the county, you need to do something about your weeds. They're invasive. They're taking over. If they didn't do anything, then they sent us in. And I'm thinking, my God, I don't know how I made it through that. But I'd wake up in the morning, I'd make my egg sandwich, get my beanie weenie, get my jug of water, whatever else grandma had in the refrigerator. I'd leave with my grandpa. I'd get home at 3. I'd take a shower. I'd take a quick nap. And then I had my weight set out in the garage. So I'd go out and get my workout in. And then we'd have dinner, and then, you know, at that time I was throwing a shot put and discus in AAU, and I'd literally go down to the Winterset High School field, and I'd throw the shot. My grandpa would roll it back to me. I'd throw it and get my throws in, and go back home, shower, to bed. And I'd get up and do that every day, 5 days a week. No, I'm spending the summer with my grandpa, who's my father, and grandpa says we're going to work, and then you can do whatever you want for the rest of the time. And I'm like, I got to get a workout in. It's going to be football season. And I got to continue to practice the shot and disc. I can't just stop throwing it. And yeah, different time growing up. It's what I see my boys doing. Granted, they both work very hard. My youngest works for a builder friend of mine. He's just a laborer, picking up trash, sweeping. He builds houses, so he does whatever needs to be done. The carpenters need done. And my oldest, Jake, has got an internship with a financial company. It's a division of Northwest Mutual. It's about a half hour from where they live in Philadelphia, him and some of his teammates. So he gets up every morning at 6. They have their workouts from 7 to 9 with the Penn football team, and then showers, gets to work, does his internship from 10 to 4, comes back home. So he does that from Monday to Thursday, and then he bounces one of the local beach bars here on Friday and Saturday night. And then Sunday we'll have dinner here when we're done, and he'll drive back to school and start his week all over again. So I'm not letting them off the hook. They both work hard. There's 95 today, and they're going to be starting youth football practice, which is for 7-year-olds up till 8th grade. in our town. They're going to be practicing 5 days a week from 5:30, 6 o'clock till 8 o'clock every night. And there's some nights where they won't allow the kids to practice. And I'd explain to Jake and his teammates, I'd be like, what do you think they're doing down in Texas right now? What do you think they're doing down in Florida? Do you think they're not practicing because it's hot, or do you think they're practicing? And the boys all know. They're like, yeah, they're practicing. They're just used to this. There's a certain toughness. And I think Jake sees it now when we watch the games and we're like, oh, this guy's from Iowa, that guy's from Iowa. You eat a different way and you're built a different way. And obviously, if you have good parenting and good morals and good values, you're brought up the right way. Hard work's what you want to do. That's how you live your life. You work hard. There's no other option. It's funny because I'd go through these hot training camps with the Giants in 2 days, and it was like nothing compared to cutting weeds in the middle of Madison County. Nobody had pools in their backyard. Out here, everybody's got a pool. There was one pool in town, the Glenwood Public Pool. That's where everybody went swimming. Nobody had pools in their backyard. And when I was working in the fields, we always prayed there'd be a pond that we could jump into around 1, 2 o'clock to cool off after we had lunch. It was a muddy, moss-covered pond. You just wanted to cool off. Just a different upbringing for sure, growing up in Iowa than 2 miles from the Atlantic Ocean here in New Jersey. That's for sure. They're used to getting on their bikes every day in the summertime and just cruising down to the beach and meeting up with all their friends and all the friends from other towns. I can't imagine living anywhere else but somewhere along a shore town between here and Fort Lauderdale. But
You almost have to be exposed to that level of work ethic. And then it's, oh, that's how it's done. You see that. And then you're like, okay, I know what level to achieve. But if you don't get exposed to that, you think you're working hard. And then you see real hard work and you're like, oh, wow, that's a big jump. And so I think
right.
a lot of people, whether it's working on a farm or just that mentality, is you learn that. And that's how it has to be. And that's an advantage when you are competing against guys who don't have that same work ethic and exposure
Right.
and know how to put in that work and not quit and not give up because it's too hot or too humid.
No, work's got to get done. And I get today with just the way things are. I couldn't live with myself if I ever had kids practice in 90-degree temperature and not take precautions and something was to happen to one of the kids, because you can't ever ensure when it gets to be that hot, every kid's body is different and you can't control what you can't control. I totally agree with the rules they have about humidity levels and heat and when we can practice and when you can't. But it was never, I don't think Coach Reeves ever called a practice. Sorry, boys, it's too hot out here. We're going to push practice back to later on today. You know what I mean? No, it never happened. Never. But yeah, totally different. I'm trying to think of what else is different. And Nick hit on it when he came out to Manhattan. The hardest adjustment for me wasn't going from high school to Iowa to play college football. It wasn't from playing college football to going to the NFL. The hardest adjustment was getting used to the people and just how they were. They could just be nasty to you. But the second you said, I play for the New York Giants, I'm not sure which you play for the Giants, where a second ago they weren't going to give you the time of the day. That's one thing I've noticed. And I'm sure it is for former kids that grow up in Iowa, play at the University of Iowa in Iowa, and if they stay in Iowa, it definitely opens a lot of doors for your career. You know what I mean? When you come across fans of the sport that you played. And obviously, I knew it'd be a big help for me being a former New York Giant, doing pharmaceutical sales in Manhattan and New Jersey, because everybody's just crazy Giants fans out here. He could stop playing football right now and just get a job in Philadelphia, and he'll probably never have to pay for another thing. Or if he goes into
True.
sales, forget it. Like, I was going crazy when he intercepted the ball and returned it in the Super Bowl. I was just like, oh my God. No, we get a lot of the Philadelphia news out here, and he's doing a good job. He's taking advantage in the right way. I see he's given back a lot to his community in Iowa too. And it just makes me feel good to see a small town Iowa boy make it and do a fantastic job. It's kudos to Coach Ferentz for recruiting the right kids and doing a great job with the Iowa program. they're so blessed that the people of Iowa to have had Hayden Fry for so many years, and then just to seamlessly really transition to Coach Ferentz. And I know you guys mentioned earlier, him and Coach Snyder were at my senior track meet to watch me throw the shot and disc. And then I had him my first 2 years at Iowa. I had Coach Ferentz, and the ramifications of the milk crate story, running the stadium steps every day after practice until he forgot while we were running. That's just an all-time classic. Yeah, and then he went to Maine, I believe. And I just read an article in the Des Moines Register about where some of the mistakes he made about going to Maine, and really just good stuff. And then to be fortunate enough for him to land on Coach Belichick's staff in Cleveland with Nick Saban and the rest of the great coaches they had there. But yeah, no, so I had John O'Hare for my next 2 years, my sophomore and junior year. And then I had Coach Frank Verducci was our line coach my senior year. So by then we were on autopilot, I would say, by my senior year in terms of what we needed to do. You just call the play and we knew exactly what we needed to do by then. Devlin was the O-line coach, basically told everybody what to do. And being a left tackle, I've always got the same guy, which always made Devlin nuts that I didn't know what else everybody else was doing. But it's like, I don't need to know what the right guard's doing. I'm the left tackle. I got my defensive end. It just frustrated him so much. And I'm like, Mike, what do I need to watch? I know who I got. But then there was a change. Obviously, when I came to the Giants, you were sent home with a bag full of VCR tapes, and you definitely wanted to watch the cut-ups of the players you were going to be going against and see what their tendencies were and what they wanted to accomplish and what maybe you could take away in terms of good things and bad things, so to say.
That's great.
I think you weaved it all back together and covered a lot of ground here.
I'd always attributed you to East Coast somehow, so it's funny to think like you were saying some of the same stories that I was like, oh god, yeah, I did that. It was like out in these fields and it's a flashback. Like, yeah,
The tasseling, corn,
walking beans.
Oh yeah, all that, picking up rock, all that stuff. Yeah.
If I told my neighbors out here when I was in 7th and 8th grade, we just wanted to work for farmers, whatever. I think we'd make $7 or $8 an hour at the most. We would walk fields picking weeds out of the soybeans, and they'd be like, "What? Are you kidding me? It's
legal?" Yeah,
it's just an easy way to make money when you don't have any money. You walk beans.
Scott, thank you so much. We appreciate hearing the stories and enjoying this time with us. We really great getting to know you more. So thanks a lot.
Yeah, it's a brilliant idea. I love what you guys are doing. Some of the stories are just outstanding. Just really bring back memories, just make me think about things in a different way with how some of the people's lives have gone. We're all one big family. So I love to hear, whether I played with them or they were younger than me or older than me, I love to hear all the stories. You guys are doing a great job.